Good morning, everyone. Tim here, aka Renfail. Welcome to early Sunday morning. I have not yet had coffee. The water's on the stove right now, heating up. Coffee's in the French press. So we'll get there in a few minutes, unless my wife beats me to it. It is early Sunday, and I know she's jonesing for coffee as much as I am. But I wanted to hop on here and get this done because I got a busy Sunday ahead of me. So let's talk a little bit. Where do I start? So this past week in particular has been a big week for what I'm going to be talking about in this video, but it's actually something that's the culmination of a lot of discussions over the past 2 to 3 weeks and some greater discussions that have been going on for the past year and a half. So first and foremost, I want to say thanks to everybody who has supported the Patreon page at some point or another over the last year and a half. I guess it's been about a year and a half since I've been doing this. Maybe just a year. I don't really know timelines. But we've had various people coming in and out, and that's great. Thank you so much for your support. And the Diary of an Indie Game Dev series, which I believe I've done 7 episodes now on, has been very well received. People have been genuinely being able to use that feedback and that insight into help their own businesses, which is great. I've gotten some amazing feedback from people and private messages and over at the Patreon page. So I'm glad that those are working for you guys. But the big announcement that I want to talk about is we've made some significant changes to how this is going to be working moving forward. And also, probably the most important aspect of this is I'm going to be bringing back the Mondays in MMORPGs series, but with a twist. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in today's episode. Tomorrow, we're going to be showcasing the first episode of the new show, and it's going to be an exclusive here on my Patreon page for patrons. So let's talk a little bit about everything, and then we'll kind of meander back around. So what's the big thing? The big thing was yesterday I went ahead and took the Gaming with Renfail and Storytime with Tim channels out of the Saga of Leucemia Discord, and I spun up my own Discord server, which is called Renfail's Refuge. And everybody has access to it. You can find a link to that in the Saga of Leucemia general chat channel. Also, there's going to be a link in the video below, so you can join there. There is a special section for patrons, which you get for being just a $1 subscriber. And that's where you're going to be able to do things like ask questions for upcoming episodes, being able to talk about an idea that you have that you would like to see in an upcoming episode of either Diary of an Indie Game Dev or Mondays in MMORPGs. So there's going to be a lot of patron-only stuff that's going on in that Discord channel, but there are other channels in there. The reason for that is just because over the past year, we've been experimenting with a lot of things through the Saga of Leucemia Discord and elsewhere, and it just felt like it was time for me to break that off and have it be its own separate thing, because a lot of what I do on a day-to-day basis, even though it is related to the development of the game, is more related to what I'm doing as a content creator. And some people seem to get confused about what's going on, how does this work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There was some confusion about, for example, our donations to the patron page going to the development of the game, and the answer to that is no. Development is all run through Stormhaven Studios and Saga of Leucemia. So money that comes to me through the Patreon page, comes to me personally as a content creator. So in order to avoid further confusion and to separate what I'm doing as a content creator away from what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis with the game, I created the new Discord channel, and we're going to be continuing to flesh that out in the coming months. So the Diary of an Indie Game Dev series, as I said, has been going really well. People have been enjoying the excerpts from Volume 2. I'm glad that you guys had so much fun reading Volume 1. I get a lot of great feedback. I think the coolest thing to me is to be able to see people's photos. When they send me photos of my book on their shelves, blows my mind. So thank you so much, everybody. That to me is like the ultimate. It was a dream of mine since I was a 7-year-old kid to be able to be a writer. And I've been a writer since 2008 professionally. I've made a living at that for more than a decade now, but I didn't get to move into the fantasy and science fiction genre as an author until early this year. So that's been a huge milestone for me, and to see people enjoying it as much as I am is really, really cool. So thanks for everybody for those screenshots and photos and everything else. So excerpts, we've done a lot of behind the scenes artwork from what's going on the game, screenshots and concept arts and zone overviews and things that I'm not sharing with the general community, because they're things that I want to share sort of as secrets, behind the scenes things that we're not giving to the general public, that they're here for people who really want that backstage access. So that's what this Patreon has been all about. And the Indie Game Dev Diary, I may have said Indie Game Dev Showcase earlier. I don't know. I haven't had coffee. But the Diary of an Indie Game Dev series, I've had quite a few people asking whether or not I was going to do that in a podcast format. And this is funny to me because we also had people during the 22 episode run of the Mondays in MMORPGs series that I did up until about a year and a half ago over at Saga of Leucemia. We also had people asking if I was going to do that in a podcast format. And in my day job, working with marketing people all around the world, podcasts are a big deal. I've never done them with the Saga of Leucemia stuff or any of the things that I do personally, because I've never felt like I was doing them often enough to justify actually putting the time into doing a podcast. A podcast needs to be like a once a week thing, minimum. If you can do it, more than that, it's great. I'm a big fan of the format that Joe Rogan takes, where he's interviewing lots of different people and lots of different themes. And those are 2.5, 3.5 hour episodes. I don't think that's necessarily how we're going to start off with the things we're going to be doing, but we may end up moving towards that depending on the growth of this. So podcasts, Diary of an Indie Game Dev series, all the other things we do on Patreon. Let's talk about the big announcement, the Mondays in MMORPG podcast that's going to be coming starting tomorrow. So, the previous 22 episodes I did typically revolved around me discussing a theme that's heavily talked about within the MMORPG space and diving into why other companies do it that way and why we in particular are choosing to do it either the same way or a different way with our own game. And there was a heavy emphasis on theory crafting and design in those episodes. And those were typically a video episode like this right here with an associated blog post. Very, very similar to what I'm doing with the Diary of an Indie Game Dev series. However, what I'm going to be doing with the new series is a little bit different. First of all, there's not going to be an associated blog post. It is going to be a podcast only. And rather than only talk about things that relate to our game and what we're building, I'm going to be talking about a lot of stuff within the MMORPG space. So to give you an example of this, I want to talk about news. I want to talk about reveals. I want to have interviews with people from different development teams. I want to have interviews from streamers and podcasters, so on and so forth. We're going to be really diving into the MMORPG genre. And depending on how big this grows and how much support we get from the audience, it could go places I haven't even considered yet. But for now, we're going to start small. So news, interviews, reviews of games and things that I think are good and bad and why. And also some theory crafting stuff. I'll try to keep that to a minimum, but when we do it, it will probably pertain to something that we're working on our game, and I might discuss that a little bit. But for the most part, this is going to be a genre-specific show that's going to be talking about lots of different things within the genre, good, bad, news, reveals, all that different stuff that I've already mentioned. We're also going to be tackling what I think is the number one problem in the industry today, which is the quality of game journalism in the market today. Some of you have heard me talk about this in the past. I've never publicly called out any of the so-called journalism outlets, which are basically game enthusiasts who run gaming blogs and call themselves media outlets. We're going to be discussing the quality of that and looking to obtain a higher level of quality in the shows that we're producing here. The ultimate goal of this is that because I am doing it as a subscriber-only podcast, it's not going to be free to the public. You have to subscribe to the Patreon page to get access to it. It's about $1 a month if you're going to subscribe to the podcast. It's in the $5 a month tier. $1 a week, I should say. It's in the $5 a month tier, and we're going to be doing weekly episodes. So, $1.25 per episode is what it's going to cost you to get access to that. And we're going to be using that money to build up towards hiring staff writers to help us cover the news. There is a goal on the page, which you'll see. It's open on the top left page. Once we get to 100 patrons, I will be hiring a staff writer to help me, and I will be paying industry rates. So we'll be looking at between 8 to 10 cents a word, more than likely, for our journalists, and we will be starting with one person and then building out from there and fleshing this out from more than just a once a week episode into a twice a week episode. And then if we can grow beyond that, we will. But this is primarily going to be focused again on news and people who are genuinely interested in high quality reporting and the industry as a whole, and just really diving deep into MMORPGs as they stand today. So here's a very quick and dirty example of really what got me recently super fired up to do this. So I've complained for a long time about these gamer outlets just providing really shoddy quality on their reporting. And the most recent has been, a couple of weeks ago, Amazon made a big announcement that they were publishing a brand new game set in Middle-earth. Now, the disconnect with a lot of people is they used the Lord of the Rings phrase in there. We're creating, we're publishing a new Lord of the Rings game. And the unfortunate reality with almost every single one of these media outlets, or these gamer media outlets, I should say, is that they ran with that headline, and no one actually bothered to go back and read the initial press release that was put out in September of 2018 by the company behind the game, Athlon Games. So if anybody's been following along with the TV show that Amazon is producing, they have very publicly announced this. I think earlier this year, it's been a long time, public knowledge, that it is a Second Age show. No one knows exactly when it's going to be set, but it is during the Second Age, which covers basically a 3,000-year gap, and it's all about the rise of Sauron, the creation of those rings of power, and then the eventual Great War against Sauron to, cut the ring off his finger and then move the world into the Third Age, which is when we pick up the story with, Aragorn, Boromir, Frodo, Sam, Legolas, Gimli, and all the characters that we know and love from the Lord of the Rings movies and books. And if you look at the press release from Athlon Games in 2018, they very clearly state that the game that they are producing is not set in the Third Age. It is set in a time, I'm not reading it right now because I'm saving that for the episode tomorrow, so I'm not reading verbatim, I'm just quoting from memory. But it basically states that the game is set in times long, long before the times that the Third Age that most people currently associate with the Lord of the Rings, and will be exploring themes and stories and characters that no one has ever really been introduced to before. So while we can't say for certain exactly when that game is going to be set, the press release very clearly states that it is not set during the Third Age. It is set in a time much, much further in the past. And considering that it's an association with Amazon Studios, we can assume that it's a Second Age production. Based on the wording of the press release and based on what we know about the show that Amazon is producing, it would make sense for them to combine, what the art style that they're creating for the show and all the heroes that they're going to introduce into the show into this new franchise. Be it as it may, it's speculation, and that's not what we're talking about. What we are talking about is the fact that all of these media outlets ran with this story, and we get all of this talk about how, Amazon is creating a new Lord of the Rings game that is going to replace Lord of the Rings Online. And there's all this speculation about, how are we going to see the Fellowship of the Ring portrayed again? How are we going to see, these storylines portrayed? Is it going to look different from Peter Jackson's movie? Blah, 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 blah. Get a lot of commentary from the community talking about how they can't wait to see the newest rendition of Gandalf and Aragorn and Frodo and Sam and so on and so forth. And it basically just seems that no one actually went back and did any actual reporting. They didn't actually go back and look at the press release from the game company that's making the game from September of last year. All they did was they hooked onto a headline on a press release put out by Amazon where it said that Amazon Studios is working on a new Lord of the Rings game. So there's a lot of issues with that. Just it's headline reporting. It's not actual reporting. There's no research being done. There's no interviews being done. There's no actual journalism taking place. It is instead looking at a headline and saying, oh, that looks like it's going to get a lot of traffic. That's a popular topic because it showed up in the hashtag MMO thing on Twitter. We're going to take that and we're going to copy and paste it. We're going to, basically using an aggregate feed. We're just going to put that on our website and we're going to call it news. This is not journalism, okay? This is headline reporting. You're not actually doing anything other than copy pasting what someone else is already saying. And that's something that I actually am extremely passionate about. Having worked in the travel journalism space for a long time, actually being on location, interviewing people in person, doing exposés, doing editorials, doing deep stories on people and themes and stories within a specific area. That's what journalism is all about. It's not about reporting on headlines. It's not about copy pasting these ridiculous, unfounded theories and or rumors and posting them to your website as if they are news. So one of the most important aspects of the new Mondays in MMORPG show in the podcast is going to be actually diving deep into a lot of these headline stories and figuring out what is the actual news there. Actually going to the source, getting interviews, doing what we can to actually uncover the news and produce it and portray it to the people in an actual journalistic way as opposed to just copy pasting things from what we see on a Twitter feed. Excuse me. It's going to be a lot of work. And it's not something that I can do by myself. Obviously, I will do the initial episodes by myself, but the goal, as I said, is to get to the point where we have 100 patrons, and then I'll be hiring a staff writer. Now, depends on what level of contribution people put into this. So if people are really enjoying the production of the show and they really get a value out of what we're producing, then by all means, there's a lot of different tiers that you can join the Patreon page at. The lowest is $1. Like everyone can pitch in $1 and they have access to the Discord channel where we'll be able to talk about things on a day-to-day basis. The podcast itself is at the $5 tier. And then beyond that, we've got the Diary of an Indie Game Dev show at... The videos go out for free on YouTube. The blog posts are at the $10 level. We've got the $15 a month tier, which allows you to pick an upcoming episode of either one of these shows. You can pick an episode of Diary of an Indie Game Dev, or you can pick an episode of Mondays in MMORPGs. And then there's a whole bunch of perks in here. You get free copies of my book, whether it's a Kindle or a signed copy. Lots of behind-the-scenes stuff that's going on with the game itself, and so on and so forth. So, basically for the podcast itself, $1 a week, basically, a little bit more than that, and you get access to that. Now, obviously, there are people we already have people who are supporting it at more than that. And again, thank you so much for that, guys. So, obviously, the 100 patrons thing is a baseline of saying if people, are paying $5 a month, and we get 100 subscribers at that, I'm getting $500 a month. Now, if you do the math on that and look at what I'm going to be paying the staff writer, I'm not going to be seeing much, if any, of that. It's going to be going towards paying the staff writer. But if people are putting in $10, $15 a month to get this going, that's going to help out a lot more, and I'll be able to hire an additional writer or hire this person quicker. It just kind of, that's a baseline goal. There are other things that we may look into doing with the podcast later on. If it gets very, very popular. The traditional podcast, the way a traditional podcast works is they're published for free somewhere. And I shouldn't say free, because most of these podcasting platforms have a monthly cost to host them, but it's very minimal. But what I mean by free is they're freely available to the public. And the flip side to that is that they have corporate sponsorship. So if you ever listen to a podcast, more often than not, they have some sort of an announcement at the beginning. There might be a mid-roll, and there might be one at the end. But there's traditionally commercials in that podcast to support that podcast. I would like to keep this free from that, which is why I'm doing it as a subscription-only podcast. So if you find value in it and you want to know about the news and you want to know about the inside of game development and you want to hear about theory crafting and why companies are doing things from someone who's actually working in the game development industry, that's me, then that's why you would want to sign up for this show. If you're just looking for free information and you're just looking for the general news and headline reports and everything else, guess what? Google is full of that kind of low quality garbage. And if that's all you're looking for is a quick fix, you just want the headlines, you don't really care about the rest of it, then you're good to go. But if you do want to support something that's actually diving into the deep end of the industry and you want to hear things about the news, things about theory crafting, interviews with people in the field, this is going to be where you want to sign up. So again, tomorrow, the first episode is going to be going live. And it's going to be sort of a test episode because it's a new format and I'm just going to be kind of running through. This one doesn't have any guests. The first few might not have guests because I'm going to be just doing them, getting the format out there, and then we're going to be expanding from there. But that's going to go live tomorrow. And I'm going to be discussing some things that are very near and dear to my heart. And we're going to be talking about some of the latest news features and talking about some company things from other companies. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of what we've got going on. And the first episode I'm going to make available for free because I want to show everyone what it's like, what we're going to be diving into. There's also, I always hear this from people that, I don't have enough money. I don't want to support for these reasons, blah, 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 blah. I see a lot of people who, they'll say that they don't have money, but then they'll spend $5 on Starbucks or $5 on a pack of cigarettes or, all of these little other things. So the money thing I've never really bought into, especially when we're talking about something that's as little as $1 to $5 a month. The issue coming up with people, they aren't sure whether or not it's worth the money. I would urge you, there are 22 episodes of Mondays in MMORPG that have already been produced over on the Saga Leucemia website. There's actually a forum post on our forums where you can go and you can very quickly access all 22 of those. Matter of fact, I might put those in the post tomorrow for everybody to get a quick link to those. There's also 7 episodes of Diary of an Indie Game Dev freely available on my YouTube. There's also a whole slew of patron posts, many of them free here on Patreon, that you can go back through. And of course, we have 4.5 years of blog posts and forum posts and Discord posts, over at Saga Leucemia. We've done 505 newsletters. Matter of fact, I have to write the 506th newsletter today after I finish up this video. You've got 4.5 years to determine whether or not it's worth it to subscribe to something that I'm producing on a personal level. As a content creator, and yeah, I'm harping on this a lot in the episode, I want to get paid, and I'm not shy about that. I have been working for free on this project for 4.5 years. I've been living on a personal loan since the end of 2017, managing this team full-time. We just hired, our new technical art director came on about a month ago. We're hiring another artist full-time at the end of August. We're continuing to build the team. We're continuing to flesh out this company. I don't make a penny of any of the money that comes in from the company. It all goes to the contractors, all of it, 100%, and business expenses, things like servers and website hosting, which are minimal, but I don't get anything. And this is a way for me to make a little bit of extra scratch to help pay the bills because, my wife loves me, but at the same time, she would love it if I made a little bit of money as opposed to only living off of personal loan. So if you appreciate the type of content that I produce, the news that I create, the fantasy stories that I create, the science fiction stories that I create, awesome. This is where you can support me as a content creator. If you like the news, if you like theory crafting, if you like behind the scenes access, that's what this is here for. It's not free. It is not. And I know some people want everything for free, but like I said, I'm not afraid to say I'm a content creator. I want to get paid. And I'm not going to go out and stream Twitch for 12 hours a day begging people for bits. I'm going to be here saying, hey, look, I'm producing something that's actually of value. If you find value in that, go ahead and subscribe at whatever level you're comfortable with, and you'll get the access that you want. But what I won't do is create a bunch of fluff for people just so that I can try to, make a few bucks on things. So if you agree with that, if you like that, if you know the type of content I produce, then put your money where your mouth is, and I will see you in tomorrow's episode of Mondays in MMORPGs and beyond as we continue to expand this Patreon page and have fun with all the different things that we're going to be doing. All right, I got to go get coffee, guys. I'm dying of thirst. And I got a newsletter to write, so see you guys on the flip side. Cheers.